most importantly, what the real, I'll put it in our modern jargon, the most attractive advertising for this being human, bar none, and which attracts most, if the highest percentage and the majority of those who come to be human, is to meet a graduate of this particular compressed learning school. A graduate of the being human experience is, I have to be unequivocal about it, is a God in other energy systems. And you have to think of it that way. Is a God in, as we term God, put it that way. And remember, our concepts of God from one perspective is very much local traffic type of perception. But there it is that that's once you meet a graduate of this particular system, truly a graduate, then in turn you, and probably have, said to yourself, I will do anything 1,000 times, 100,000 times, whatever, if I can be like that graduate. And that's exactly the important thing. Because a graduate is much on the order of what we perceive to be a super something. And the availability of that being and where those graduates go and be is something that we will not get into tonight, but it becomes obvious that they are no longer interested in local traffic. So I can just hear the radiation of all of you as you're saying, well, what about us? Where are we? Are we locked in? Wrong. You are those, and I can give you a number of different descriptions, and you can figure out the acronym when I say you're the SAers, S.A.ers, who have begun the recycling, where you in turn have begun to work yourself out more and more. In other words, you're on your way out. You have begun to achieve a deeper and deeper orbit. That's who you are. Step by step, laboriously, lifetime after lifetime, you have begun to accumulate or re-establish escape velocity. My best guess, and it's only a guess because it's so hard to measure, that most Gateway graduates are up in here sometime. In other words, they are on the verge not of achieving escape velocity, but way up here on what I call the last timer role. I see you as those who, when they make their exit from this sojourn, this time, will get into this last sojourn spot of contemplation or thinking about what will be my last run in. You are a last timer to be. So what that role is that you will play for the last time is something that you will decide, not now, but where you are in this contemplative, non-physical state. And I might add that some have stayed there for thousands of years. And I say that in a very funny way because that is out of time, but by our concept, they would have stayed there for thousands of years. And you have some very, very fascinating options, knowing that our recorded history is this limited when the span of human history is about 10 to 20 times that long at least. So that gives you an idea of what your options are, and your options don't become limited to the future. They're all up and down that span of human existence. Fascinating? Great opportunities. Think what fun you can have, you know? So that is where you are, how you are, why you are. And it again has something of extreme interest. And what I need to do then is show you why some of those things are in that way and how that relates to you. And this is interesting in that it will help you begin to perceive you as you really are. And I have to tell you a story in order to do that. When I went through a span of stages in my goals, my desires. My first one was, and you can see how these things begin to change, and some interesting news for you. You will change new also, so don't worry about it. It'll be very automatic. But mine, I had to do the hard way. First of all, as I developed this perception as I am, or thought I was, what happened was that I got into the idea that my goal would be to be in the service of humankind, having perceived those up there in that outer contemplative period who were still thinking about how they could help humans, and having met those coming in who were mission-bound or being missionaries or whatever. My goal seemed to be that could I possibly do something or continue in the service of humankind. What, forever? I never even thought of what forever meant. But that being the goal, to be that, to help all these miserable characters that were still stuck back here. This had been my goal and was for many years, until one of my non-physical friends, we got into the discussion of goals, and he said, well, maybe our goals are different. And I said, well, to him, I don't see how they could be worse. We're so much alike. And obvious when I thought about it. I took months and months to get to this because there are other parts of life to do other than just simply sit around and contemplate. Not in my case anyway. So I finally got around to, yes, this great enlightenment. Aha, yes, I know what another goal is, and that's a beautiful goal. And that goal was to go home, because we all have this intense nostalgia to go home. And I thought, yes, that's for me. I want to go home. What I want to do is take my human learning experience and go back home and help home be more than it is. This was my goal. And that's great. Oh, I lived this, and this is wonderful. And built into it were all the usual things. Go back, the local boy makes good, and he goes down the street with his zoot suit or his whatever, his super loafers, whatever, the whole thing. And his bag full of tricks, well, or knowledge. And that seemed like I'm adding the reality to it, because quite probably much of that was the noble goal of helping home be more than it was as I remembered it, but being realistic that probably my egoism was in there muchly too. So, and I had been home twice, way back in the early years, and home to me was a estate place where there were these beautiful moving clouds in different rainbow hues and things like that. And that was where home was, to be in those clouds. And as you were in those clouds, there was this, and I'm only translating something that can't be translated, there was this tremendous 1,000-piece symphony orchestra of music playing constantly, or you could hear it. And then a 1,000-voice choir behind that, and all this mixed into this beautiful state of being. And how wonderful I remembered that exquisite beauty of it. And each time when I had visited there upon request, I had to be pulled back here because it was so endearing to me to go home.